You mentioned earlier the state pension crisis that's looming and the transportation issues that we're going to have with the rejection of I-80 tolling. So some people would say your tax protection pledge is impractical given the things we're facing in the next 3 years.
I disagree. And here's why I disagree. If you look at Governor Rendell's budget, I believe it was in excess of $26 billion. 80% of that budget is allocated for mandated spending that by law we have to make. By default, that means we have 20% of that budget that is discretionary spending, in excess of $5 billion. If our options are to raise taxes so that we can fund in excess of $5 billion of discretionary spending, or we can be fiscally responsible, not increase taxes, and use that discretionary spending where it is most needed, then we have to do the latter. We have the money. It's in the budget. We need to take the discretionary spending and apply it where it is most needed. Now, that's one of the things that I talked about earlier during my introduction, where I'm going to say things that people are going to disagree with. One of the things that came up at the League of Women Voters Forum was library spending. Now, that's personal to me. I have 4 kids that go to the Mill Memorial Library program on a weekly basis and have for the past, my oldest, for the past 7 years. It was taken out of last year's budget, and it's not in this year's budget. And the question posed was, would you support reinstating that money? I'd love to, but we can't afford it. And these are the cuts that we have to make. Hopefully, down the line, we'll be able to reinstate it. Once we get back in the black and we're able to say, okay, we've managed the spending, we've come out of these times, we haven't had to raise taxes, we've spent our discretionary income wisely, and we've gotten to a point where we can start reinvesting back into these civic programs. But right now, we can't. But the money's there to meet this, I think it's a $700 or $800 million deficit in the Department of Transportation, and the money's there to address the pension issue as well.
So what are some of your ideas on, and you say the money's there, but what are some of your thoughts and ideas on how we can get there?
Well, how we can get where?
How we can plug this gap and
where would you be
get in the black? Yeah.
Well, here's the question that I'm always, well, can you identify specific programs that you would say, well, we can cut these programs out of that $5 billion plus? I look at it the other way. I say cut right down to the bones right now. Get us to where we have the 80% of money that is spent towards mandated spending, and we have this amount that is left over. Now we plug the gap with that money. We don't work backwards and say, well, we're going to take out this many million for library, or this many million towards fencing for a community organization. I think we go right to zero and work our way up. We know we have a $2.3 billion hit coming with the teacher pension. Well, there you go. That's out of the mix right now. We're going to put that in. I think the governor calls it a stimulus transition plan. Well, let's start our own. Let's do that right now. So that money's gone. So now we're down to 2.7. If we need $700 million for the Department of Transportation to make sure that our infrastructure is sound, put it in. And if we have anything left, then you go from there. So to me, it's not a question of what programs do you cut. It's which ones do you fund. I look at it the opposite way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think people might point to Luzerne County as an example, though, and say, well, they've sort of tried that with Moon Lake Park and some other, that's discretionary spending, but the moment that you cut it off, that's something that affects the residents, and they're going to start to house as much as they do with taxes.
Right. These are burdens I'm willing to shoulder. I mean, that's all I can tell you is, and my response to them will be, listen, I understand about, I'm not going to talk about Moon Lake Park because that's a county issue, but I understand about the libraries. And that is something that I, as a father, am feeling too, because my kids have participated in that. But you have to ask yourself this question. Is that something that you want on, but as a result, we're not going to be able to reduce your property taxes and we may have to increase your income tax? Or is this something that you want and you're willing to shoulder that? I'm telling you that what I'm hearing overwhelmingly from the people that I've met is we can't have any more tax increase. And last I checked, this is a republic. We got to represent the people's interest, and that's what I'm hearing over and over and over again.
But some of that, I agree in Moon Lake, the county cuts were county cuts, but the Luzerne County rec fields were fields that also brought jobs in, because Whitewater Challengers hosts a soccer tournament there that brings families from all over the East Coast, and their employment for people in at that Whitewater Challengers. They bought groceries, so it was like jobs and economic development too. So it wasn't just a place where people play ball. There was closing Eckley, a state historic site, meant that people were out of jobs too. It wasn't just a playground for people. It was also jobs for people.
And did you see the county's response to that? Now, I'm president of the Greater Nanticoke Area Youth Soccer League, so I'm invited to the Wyoming Valley Youth Soccer League Association meetings on a monthly basis. Well, I went to the meeting last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, and I was presented with the county's proposal for those fields that you're talking about. You're talking about the fields up by the airport.
Yep.
Okay. Now, these are fields that the Wyoming Valley Youth Soccer Association and what you talked about, the Whitewater Challenge, have been able to rent from the county for really insignificant fun, freight, right, $300, $600. Well, they gave us the schedule for this year's because we run the county cup out of that, off of those fields. Not the county cup, I'm sorry, the county festival off of those fields. They want $2,100 per field per day. So in my opinion, what the county is doing is they're pricing everyone out of using those fields so that they don't even have to maintain them. To me, that I see no other rationale for why they put those types of price tags on those fields. And I can, by the way, I can get you that. It would just take me a couple of days because I didn't. They only had one copy at the meeting and they passed it around for everybody to look at. But what they're doing, I think, is they're essentially eliminating that service so they don't even have to maintain it because there's not going to be one organization in Luzerne County that can afford to play softball, soccer, or anything there.
Good story, but back to the point. Sometimes closing these things down means there's
tourism
unintended
dollars.
consequences that could affect jobs or revenue, and could affect the revenue stream for the state too.
You know what we've gotten away from, and again I'm going to call on my personal experience is not so much the county fields, but a lot of the other groups that come to the state government for grants have simply gotten to a point where that's all they rely upon. As I just mentioned, I'm part of the Nanticoke Soccer League. I'm also part of Basketball Association in Newport. I'm also part of Softball Association in the South Valley. And I can tell you that those groups handle their need for money differently. The Soccer Association, for example, is an independent unit. And the people who are involved work their behinds off so they don't ever have to go to the state and ask for money or for a grant. And as a result, it is such a fiscally sound group that is in such great financial shape that it's a well-run organization. One of the softball organizations I'm involved with, when we go to the meetings, all you hear is, well, I was at Udechok's office looking for this, I was at this office trying to get this. And what I've noticed is that the bank account for that group is $1,300 as opposed to $30,000 in the soccer. And what I think happens is these groups have become so reliant upon state help that the people don't want to work to make it the organization that it can be. I draw back to when I was a kid in Plymouth Township. We built, not we, my parents and the other parents of the community built a recreation association there that was second to none at the time, and they didn't get one state dollar to do it. People need to own up. I mean, if there are organizations out there that can be community driven and successful, and you don't have to constantly come to the state with your hand out.